right. Okay, so we're going to start on page 38, 39, to have a deeper understanding of the things we said before. Let's start again from the beginning. We started the paragraph yesterday, but we'll start again. Habir v'pasuk v'ata tetzave. The explanation of the pasuk ata tetzave in the Maimer of the previous Rebbe, the hemshech lamavur tchila haMaimer. It comes in continuation. It follows something that's explained earlier in the Maimer. And that is on the pasuk v'kibul Yehudim, and the Yidden accepted upon themselves as asher chelu lases, what they began to do, what they began to observe. It means shekiblu masher chelu b'zman dematan Torah. It means they accepted upon themselves that which they began in the time when the Torah was given. That means that when the Yidden made this commitment in the times of Mordechai to recommit themselves to Torah, and that was their tshuva, their commitment was such a strong thing, was such an amazing experience. It's equivalent to the commitment that they gave when the Torah was given. In fact, when the Torah was given, when they were standing at Har Sinai, that was the beginning. And when they made this commitment in the time of Mordechai, that was the conclusion, that was the completion of that process. We have a mimer here. That was the completion of the process. The Matan Torah Hoysas, yeah. Matan Torah was the beginning. In times of Achashverosh, Bizman Gzeres Haman, when Haman made his decrees, Hoysa Kabbalah v'Kibul Yehudim. That's what it means. The Yidden accepted on themselves, that they re-accepted on themselves the Torah. Now, why was it incomplete when the Torah was given? And why was there a need to sort of complete the process? Why was the process incomplete? So he says in the next piece, the bracket. This is similar to what it says in the Gemara on a different pasuk, which has similar words. Kimu v'kibul Yehudim, kimu mashakiblu kvar. So I just want to show it to you inside. If you look in the booklet in the back on page 19, it's a page from the Megillah. So there are two psukim that are underlined. I'm going to go to the one that's on the bottom of the page. Pasuk Chav Zayin, or in English it's 27. It says, Kimu v'kiblu Yehudim aleihem. The Jews confirmed and undertook upon themselves, and they confirmed. Something was there that they confirmed. So the Gemara says that this means that at the time when the Torah was given, they accepted the Torah, but it was incomplete. And at the time when they went through the decrees of Haman, that's when they confirmed their acceptance. That's what it says in Gemara. The first line is not in Gemara, that's in a Maimer, that's in Chassidus. But it says that the words in the first line mean the same thing, the Kibul Yehudim, and the Yidden accepted upon themselves that which they'd begun. So the beginning was when the Torah was given, and the completion was in the times of the decrees of Haman. Now the question is why? So he doesn't bring this here, in the notes they bring it, but I'll tell you what it says in Gemara. And this is one of those Gemaras. In general, when you learn something in a Medrash or stories in Gemara, usually they're very, very strange and a lot of times hard to understand. The reason for that is because there's more depth to it than what meets the eye. It's not just ordinary stories. They have a lot of depth to it. In fact, Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya that most of the secrets of Kabbalah are hidden in these stories. So on the surface, it's a story. This rabbi did this rabbi did that. A story how Hashem spoke to Moshe, Moshe spoke to Hashem. But the truth is, there's tremendous depth in this story and tremendous hidden secrets of Kabbalah that's hidden in these stories. So in general, when you learn Chassidus, it enhances the understanding of the Gemara. Sometimes you learn something in Gemara that not only does Chassidus enhance it, but without Chassidus, it's almost impossible to really make sense of it. It's like so complicated. This is one of those Gemaras. What does it say in the Gemara? That when the Eden was standing at Har Sinai, we all know that they're praised because they said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will listen. And this means they did something where they showed how they were more committed than all the nations of the world. Because when Hashem came to the children of Esav and he asked them, do you want to accept the Torah? Their answer was, well, let me hear, what does it say in there? And then when they were told what it said, by the way, what does that mean? He went to every single non-Jew who was a descendant of Esav? What does it mean he went to Esav? So, lahavdil, what does it mean when he went to the Jews? He went to every single Yid. Hashem spoke to every Yid? No. There was a Navi, Moshe. Hashem spoke to Moshe. Moshe spoke to the Yidden, and they gave their answer back to Moshe. So the non-Jews also had prophets. Bilam was a prophet. There were other prophets. So Hashem spoke through these prophets to the nation of Esav and asked them, do you want to accept the Torah? And their response was, what does it say in the Torah? And when they heard what it said, they said, not for us. Then he went to descendants of Ishmael. And what does it say in the Torah? They said, if that's the case, it's not for us. When he came to the Yidden, they're praised because they said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do, and then we'll hear what you have to say. We don't have to hear before what does it say in the Torah. But when you look in Gemara, it's a little different story. The Gemara says, these are the words in Gemara. You can see it here in the footnote 45, Gemara and Shabbos. Hashem took the mountain, Har Sinai, held it over their heads, and it was surrounding them like as if it was like some sort of a barrel or a vat. And Hashem said, if you accept the Torah, fine. If not, I'm going to drop this on your heads and you'll be buried here. And the Yidden said, Na'aseh v'nishma. Wow, beautiful. I mean, that's beautiful. But anyway, that's what the Gemara says. And therefore, the acceptance of Torah was incomplete because they accepted it sort of under pressure. In the times of Haman, that's when they accepted it totally, completely, willingly, lovingly, without any kind of pressure. And really, this needs an explanation because, what does it mean? Hashem held a mountain over their head and he threatens them. So we're going to explain that a little bit later. Right now, we're just going on the general subject. How could it be that when the Torah was given, they didn't accept it fully? In the times of Haman, they accepted it fully. So let's see the question inside. Page 40, 41. Do we have more copies? Rahulhani, you got a copy? So you know. I don't think I have more copies. You are? Okay. So the previous Rebbe points out in his Maimer, on the surface, this looks very difficult to understand. It's like sort of shocking. Why? When the Yidden received the Torah, they were in a very high place. In what way? They saw godliness revealed in the most revealed way. It says in Tanya that the way Hashem revealed himself by Har Sinai never again happened in history ever. And the only time it's ever going to happen is once Mashiach comes. So Hashem revealed himself to them in a way that was unprecedented. And that's in addition to the fact that before the Torah was given, they already saw godliness revealed. Mitzias Mitzrayim, when they went out of Mitzrayim, godliness was revealed. When the sea split, godliness was revealed. Every single one of the Makkahs was revealed godliness, miracles upon miracles. Imagine they're walking in the desert and there's a cloud that appears that lights them up at night, another cloud straightens out the roads. They just were living miracles every second. And by that time, they already had the month, so food was falling down from Shemayim. In other words, they were flooded with godliness revealed. That was in the times of Matan Torah. In times of Achashverosh, Yisrael b'tachlis ha'yerida. They were all the way at the other end of the spectrum, the lowest level spiritually, which means godliness was concealed. In addition to the fact that all golusim, the word golus by definition means a time where godliness is concealed, because kol golus bedugmas golus mitzrayim. Every golus is a similar and it's sort of a reflection of golus mitzrayim, and that's based on sources where it says that golus mitzrayim is the beginning of all the golus, and all the golus sort of follow that model of golus mitzrayim. So because just like golus mitzrayim, ksiv the shamu el Moshe, the koitzer ruach Mamar Veata Tetzave. We just had this in the parsha of Shmos, that when Moshe came to the Yidden to tell them the good news we're going out of Mitzrayim, they didn't hear him. It doesn't mean they didn't hear his words. They didn't listen. They didn't accept what he said. Because of the shortness of breath, Mamar Veata Tetzave, because of the hard labor. So it doesn't mean just, physically. It means they were so drained and so exhausted from the physical labor, and so drained and so exhausted, they were spent spiritually. In fact, there's a very interesting Hasidic interpretation. I don't know if this is from a Chabad source, but it's a Hasidic interpretation. Koitzer ruach, ruach means breath, and koitzer means short, a short breath. They were like a person who's so exhausted. But another interpretation is ruach means ruchnius, and koitzer ruach means shortness of ruchnius. Now, they were lacking in their spiritual sensitivity, that when he gave them the good news, they just didn't even hear it. It reminds me of what I once read, where this woman was describing that she was in one of the camps, and naturally life was miserable. And then they came to tell them that they're going to go to a new place. And she describes how there were three kinds of reactions amongst the people. One reaction was a little bit of excitement. Maybe the new place will be better than this place. One reaction was the opposite, that the new place is surely going to be worse than this place, so maybe that'll be the end. And then she said there was another group, there was no reaction. They weren't happy, they weren't sad, they were just so numb, like nothing made a difference anymore. So basically, Yidden were physically exhausted and drained, but it also means that spiritually they lost their sensitivity. And every galus is like that there are many tests and many challenges in observing Torah mitzvah because Hashem's presence is concealed. So every galus and all the time throughout galus, it's a time of concealment. But the greatest concealment ever, just like we said by Matan Torah, the greatest revelation ever was when the Torah was given. We can also say the opposite, that the greatest concealment ever in history was in the times of Haman. Why would you say that? Any thoughts? Why would this be the greatest concealment? I mean, there was a concealment. You didn't keep Torah. They were intermarrying. Why was it the greatest concealment?
Because Hashem's name was written in the Sefer?
You're right, but I think it's the other way around. Because it was the greatest concealment, that's one of the explanations why Hashem, that's the only book of Torah that doesn't have Hashem's name once. And another place where we see that as the greatest concealment, what is the book called, the Megillah? Esther. What does Esther mean? Concealment. And it's based on a pasuk in the Torah where it says, Anoichi haster aster panei, I will hide my face. And that's why Purim people put on masks to represent the concealment. But why? Where do we see, what could we point to and say, here's where we can see that the concealment of godliness in the times of Purim was worse than any other time of Golus? I think the answer to that would be, there was a decree that Haman gave. What was the decree? That every man, woman, child, chas v'shalom, should be eliminated from the world, and there would be no trace left of Jews at all. This decree that Haman gave wasn't just coming from Haman, it was a decree in Shemayim. And the Yidden needed to be saved from that decree. that means that Hashem gave such a decree through Haman. There was never a time in history where there was a decree that every single Jew in the world, God forbid, should be wiped out. So that's the greatest concealment. In other words, Hashem hid himself and concealed himself from us to the degree that we never saw it before or after. In fact, it says that one of the things that Hashem did, which was a kindness, that was spread out in different countries. If there's a decree in one country, Yidden could keep Torah mitzvahs in another country. There's a decree here, we can live there. But in those days, the whole world belonged to one king, Achashverosh, and all the Jews were under this decree. And the worst part was that it was a decree in heaven. So it's interesting that Matan Torah and the time of Purim were two ends of the spectrum. Matan Torah was Hashem revealed to the highest degree, and in the times of Purim, Hashem was concealed to the highest degree. He showed the opposite of love for the Jews to the furthest point that could be shown, that as if he wanted them to chas v'shalom be wiped out completely. Nevertheless, what are we saying? That when the Torah was given, when the Yidden were on the highest level, it was only the beginning of Matan Torah. And the time of Haman, when Yidden was so low, they reached the lowest level spiritually, precisely then were they able to complete what they began before. How could that be? So in the Maimon of the previous Rebbe, he gives the following answer. Bizman Hagzeir, in the time of the decree, Hayakim Atei Mitzvah Shlem B'Mesiras Nefesh. When they did tshuva, they began to do Torah mitzvahs, but with serious nefesh. They put their life on the line. Where do they have Mesiras Nefesh? First of all, Shloi Lichbar Chas V'Sholem, that they didn't deny their identity as Jews. The story is not in the Megillah, but the Rebbe brings it from Torah, or the next piece in the brackets. Hayu Mamrim Dosam. If the Jews, any Jew of that generation, would have made up his mind that he's going to, God forbid, convert to become a Persian, they would do nothing to him. That the decree was not on those people. The decree was only on Yidden. It says, not only nobody made such a move to convert in order to save their life, it didn't even dawn on them the thought that maybe they can do something like that. So that's one thing, Mesiras Nefesh. So just being Jewish was Mesiras Nefesh, because they could have easily, like many, unfortunately, in Spain and other countries, people did that. They converted to save their lives. But over here, there was another thing, that there were so many practices of Yiddishkeit that were prohibited, and they went ahead and did it anyway. To the point that Mordechai, he killed Kehilas Barabin, he made public gatherings, made big fabrengens. Everybody came together and they were learning Torah with Mesiras Nefesh. We know that Mordechai gathered 22,000 children to learn Torah with them, and the same thing with adults. So this is the answer. That the reason why they were able to complete the process of Matan Torah, of receiving the Torah, and it was higher, was dafka because it was such darkness. Dafka, there was such a big challenge. So therefore, it brought out within them to have Mesiras Nefesh. And this Mesiras Nefesh enabled them to reach the highest heights, to receive the Torah on the highest level. And where did they get the strength to have such Mesiras Nefesh? Especially if we think of it, it was a time in history where Jews were assimilating and they gave up on going out of Gullus. They were in a situation where they were in despair. You know, the story of Purim is that 70 years had passed, and the Navi said, after 70 years, you're going out of Gullus. And here the 70 years were over, and they're still in Gullus. So a lot of Jews gave up hope that they're ever going to go out, and therefore they decided to just assimilate and become like everybody else. So where did they get the Mesiras Nefesh from? Mesiras Nefesh, the one who aroused them to have Mesiras Nefesh was Mordechai Yehudi, who was the Moshe of that generation. So this is what it means, that in the times of Haman, the Yidden re-accepted the Torah, reconfirmed their acceptance, which they began by Matan Torah. But Matan Torah was only the beginning. And at the time of the Gezerah, of the decrees of Haman, they completely accepted. By having Mesiras Nefesh, Nisalu, the Inyan Zeh, so in context of this subject, they became so much higher, much greater than Matan Torah. And that's why then they were able to accept the Torah fully, which they couldn't do before. So basically, when a person has Mesiras Nefesh, what's Mesiras Nefesh? Ready to give up their life. That means it's the deepest commitment to Hashem, the deepest dedication to Hashem, deeper than learning, than davening, than everything else, because this is ready to give up the person's life. So that means the acceptance came from the deepest resources of their recesses of their neshama. And that wasn't there when the Torah was given.
All over the world, or was it just the Jews of Shushan that had that Mesiras Nefesh?
Looks like it was all the Jews. The decrees were on all the Jews all over.
Everyone, all the Jews all over had, they all had Mesiras Nefesh, and they didn't go out to convert.
Yeah, because the decree was against all of them. I didn't see anywhere. I mean, there is something about the Jews in Shushan is regarding the opposite, the Avera. There's a question that's asked, what was the Avera that the Jews went to the party, but only the Jews of Shushan went to the party, not others. But in terms of the decree itself was on all Jews.
Right.
And obviously the decree not to do mitzvahs like Bris Milah and Yontiv and all that was on all Jews. And whoever did it with Mesiras Nefesh.
All that's not in the Megillah openly, right?
It's in the Midrashim, yeah.
Yeah, because you don't see decrees.
When the Gezerah was over, it says like Yehudim Hoysa Ora v'Simcha v'Sasa v'Kar. We say that in Havdalah when Shabbos is over. So the Gemara says Ora means light, the Simcha is happiness, Sasan is joy, Yikar is honor. But the Gemara says it represents the mitzvahs that they were prohibited. Ora is Torah, the Simcha is Yontiv, Sasan is Bris Milah, and Yikar is Tefillin. These things were prohibited, and the Yidden had Mesiras Nefesh to do it. I thought I was saying things, but it's actually true. Page 43 is twice, at least in my copy. Do you have it once or twice? Once, okay. So I am saying things, okay? Yeah.
Where do we see like in history that the Jews like showed the Mesiras Nefesh that we're talking about?
Other times in history?
No, like in the story of Purim, because we know that the Jews went to Hashverosh like banquet.
Oh, so this was after. Once the Gezerah came out, Mordechai called that they should do tshuva, and they did tshuva.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
How did we not know the datiness of the Torah fully prior to that?
How do we not know? I didn't get it.
No, well, how do we know the datiness of the Torah fully?
That they didn't. Because the Gemara bases on these words in the Megillah. It says they accepted that which they began, which implies that when the Torah was given was the beginning. In other words, like everything else, this is the written Torah. Comes along the oral Torah and says, when they began, the beginning was when the Torah was given. That means it was only a beginning of a process, not complete. And now is the completion. So this is the explanation why then was the beginning and now was the completion.
He's the fastest master. Also, Mesiras Nefesh, like in 3 days.
I don't think we consider that part of the Mesiras Nefesh because, fasting is difficult, it's uncomfortable, but we wouldn't say it's Mesiras Nefesh.
Rabbi Majeski, why is it that it seems that our greatest revelations of Hashem always come after horrendous suffering?
Good question. Maybe that'll be answered in the next page, 44, 45.
Okay.
Now we can appreciate what it said before, kosis lamor, to crush the olive, lamor, to give light. Shadei kosis, we explained before, being in Golus means being crushed. Nishba v'nitke magiyim lamor. Remember the question was, it should have said they crushed the olives to give light, not mo'er, which is luminary for it. So the answer is, it means more, the source of the light. What is it referring to? In the neshama, we have the light of the neshama, and we have the source. The source of the light of the neshama is the intellect, the emotion, the feelings, all our other faculties and senses. That's the light. The source is the essence of the soul, the core, which is the source of everything. So when we are being crushed, that brings out the source. That dafka be when there's a gzeira and there's Mesiras Nefesh, Mesiras Nefesh Beipin Naila Yeser. They were able to reach the essence of the neshama, and therefore they were able to receive the Torah on a whole different level because the essence is just so much higher, infinitely higher than the faculties of the neshama and the light of the neshama. So Begashmias, again, there are probably not dozens of mashalim. There's no mashal that can really explain this fully, but the Eibishter created the world in a way we have dozens of mashalim to bring out this idea. One of them is which actually with an olive. An olive has oil, but you can't light anything with an olive. So, and you can't turn the olive upside down and the oil will come pouring out. The only way to get the oil out is by crushing it. Or similarly, grapes. Grapes have wine. We know wine is a very elegant drink. You put it on the tables of kings. Wine is used in the Beis Hamikdash. We use it for Shabbos and for Yom Tov. The wine comes from the grapes, but the grapes won't give you wine unless you crush the grapes, and then the wine comes out. In other words, there's something here, but the only way that potential comes out is through crushing it. So basically, the potential of our neshama, the deepest potential neshama, comes out when there is this process of golus. Sometimes I once saw another mashal. I'm sure each mashal is there to bring out a different part of it, a different point. That sometimes you have water flowing. There's a stream of water flowing. Nice, pleasant, gentle flow. And you have something in the water that you wanted to be moved, but it's heavy, and the water, because it's flowing gently, is not strong enough. The current is not strong enough to move it. So what do? You create a little dam. You block the water, and the water is blocked. So the water that flows doesn't go anywhere, it gets blocked. And the water pressure builds up, builds up, builds up, builds up. And finally, the water pressure becomes so strong that it breaks through whatever is blocking. And then it moves with so much force that it carries whatever you want it to move with the water. So the way you were able to build up all that pressure was dafka when it was blocking. And that's the same with the neshama. When we ask, why did the neshama come down to this world? There's so many Maimarim and Chassidus that they start off with this question, Lama Yarda Neshama Lamata. Why did neshama come down to this world? And there's actually a Hasidic song with these words. The Madrichot will surely teach it to you one day. Why did the neshama come down to this world? And the answer is, you read it, Tzarech Aliyah. It came down to go up higher. So it says in Chassidus, it's the same thing again. The neshama is up there. I would think the neshama comes down only to refine the guf, the nefesh bahamis, the rest of the world. It's like last night with the debate. Is the neshama here for its own avodah, or is the neshama here to change the world? And the answer is both are true. The neshama comes down to change the world, but by coming down in a guf, in a nefesh bahamis, in a physical world that is blocking a certain depth of the neshama comes out that even in Shamayim, in the highest place of Gan Eden, the neshama doesn't experience it. And dafka by coming down here and being challenged with all the challenges, that'll bring out that being crushed in a spiritual sense, brings out the deepest depth of the neshama. And that's the purpose. So perhaps that's one of the answers to your question, that why we find that Dafka, there's all this difficulty before there's something, a great revelation. The Yidden were in Mitzrayim, and only then did they receive the Torah. They were in a second Golus, and only then did they get the second Beis Hamikdash. We're now 2,000 years in Golus, and then we're going to have Mashiach. This is sort of the pattern which will change once Mashiach comes, that before there's something very big that has to be revealed, there has to be something blocking, because without the blocking, there's also light, but it's not the deepest kind of light. The deepest kind of light can only be sort of brought out when there's something blocking and something opposing and crushing, and then the deepest depth comes out. There's a beautiful sikha from the Rebbe that maybe some of you learned in the sikhas class, that it says in the Zohar that yes, it's true, we have to go through these difficulties, but really people can go through difficulties in their Torah studies. They don't understand something and they work hard to understand it better, and they're spending hours and they're really struggling with it. And he writes that if a person struggles and works hard and toils in learning Torah, understanding Torah, he won't have to sometimes struggle and work hard and be dealing with challenges in the physical sense. The whole point is something has to challenge me. So I can choose that those challenges should be spiritual challenges rather than chas v'shalom dealing with health, with other issues that are gashmizdika challenges. So the principle is there has to be something challenging me, and we're hoping that those challenges shouldn't be, God forbid, so severe. But anyway, that time is coming to an end already. We're at the end of our road. So Mesiras Nefesh Mitzat Etzma Neshama Shalomayla Megilui, Mesiras Nefesh. In order to have Mesiras Nefesh, I very often think of it in the buildings. I don't know if we have it in our building. I think we do. There are emergency lights. You know what that is? These are lights that have their own batteries. And even if all the electricity in the building goes off, they can go on. Not only even, it only goes on when all the lights go off. In other words, when it's light in the building, those lights don't shine. When it gets dark in the building, that's when those emergency lights shine. So the etzem hanefesh, the essence of the soul, is that kind of mechanism, that when there's darkness and everything else is being blocked, that's when the essence of the neshama comes out, and that's when the Mesiras Nefesh comes. So now we have a deeper understanding of the word kasis lamor. Again, mor means the source of the soul. Literally, mor means the source of light, and we're thinking of the menorah. But on a deeper level, it means the light of the neshama. That the source is provoked, is brought out only through kasis, when there is chas v'shalom, things that are crushing, which is what Golus is all about. However, the Rebbe still finishes off with the question. Mehemshich v'seder enyanim. It's similar to the question at the end of the previous chapter. If you follow the sweet sequence of ideas in this Maimer, we see that this interpretation of Kosas Lamor comes after he explained the concept of Raya Mehemna. First, he explained that Moshe Rabbeinu feeds us with Amunah. Then he explained not only Moshe, but in every generation there's a Moshe Rabbeinu that does that. And then he explains, and this is what Kosas Lamor is, that when the neshama is crushed, the deepest depth of the soul, the essence, comes out. And that leads to Mesiras Nefesh. What's the connection between these two thoughts? It's as if first I have to know about Moshe being Raya Mehem and all that in order to understand this. They seem to be two separate, independent thoughts. But from the sequence in the Maimer, it's clear it's not independent. Only after learning and understanding that Moshe is the one who provides it with Amunah, we can understand the second thing. So in order to explain that, the Rebbe goes a little bit deeper into the Amunah. Where does the Amunah come from? So here we're getting a little bit more to the meat of the Maimer. 46, 47. Yesh levar zeh piyadua. This can be explained based on what is well known. Yisrael ma'aminim b'elukus b'emunah pshuta. Gemara says that Yidden have a natural belief. It's inherent in every Yid to believe, which means even though there are so many Yidden who don't believe, there always were Yidden who didn't believe. That means that something is sort of concealing their true essence. But even under that, buried underneath it all, even that Jew has emunah. That was the story that Rochana told yesterday, right? You told that story. Who told the story with the guy in the car that had a tractor trailer behind him? Anabina told the story? Oh, Chava. No?
No,
Maybe La Martina.
maybe the other two,
No.
but no.
La Martina, Leora.
The Aura, I think. Could be the Aura, yeah. Here's a person who didn't believe, and then something happened, he started to believe. In English, they say,
Oh,
in America, they say there are no atheists in foxholes. Foxhole is where in the army, you're in a hole and you're shooting from the hole. In other words, all of a sudden people start believing in Hashem.
That story, that rabbi, his son is usually a companion.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, you know the story? Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard a recording recently, very strange recording. It's actually a Jew from Williamsburg who is a chassid. If you would see him, he has a little beard and the long payas. Looks like anybody else, a man with a white beard. And apparently he's talking to a crowd and he's telling everybody that you would never believe it, but I wasn't Jewish. I'm a convert. I don't look it. His Yiddish is fluent, as if he was born with it. And he tells a story of how he became a convert. And he said he lived in Mexico, and he was 14 years old. Upstairs was his apartment, downstairs was a bar. And he said every night he saw people, in the bar, and they were wild and doing all sorts of crazy things. And then one day there was an earthquake, and the whole place shook. Everybody ran out of the bar, and they were screaming, "God help me, help me, God help me." Everybody was screaming, "God help me." And after 30 something seconds, it calmed down. And then everybody says to the other guy, "You okay, Pedro? You okay? This one, you okay?" "Yeah." "Oh, everybody's okay." He says, "I was sure that after this, they're all going to come by the tshuva." I mean, he speaks in his language. They're going to change their lives. They were begging Hashem, "I'll be so good from now on. I'm going to change everything I'm going to do." He says, after everything calmed down, let's go back into the bar. And they went right back to where everything was before. But here we see a person had an experience, became aroused, and changed his life. Because b'pnimis, he always had the amunah. So the question is, where does that come from? Where does this natural amunah come from? Especially an intelligent person. And Yidden are required to use their intellect, to learn, to understand, to question. That's what Torah is all about. The Gemara is everything is being questioned, everything is being challenged, trying to know where does it come from, and why do we say this, and how do we know that? And yet the amunah is something which is, and it says amunah pshut, a simple faith. What does this term simple faith mean? There's a faith that comes after a lot of intellectual research. The faith that a child has is simple faith. He didn't do research. He just naturally accepts. When you tell him Hashem created the world, and Hashem gives you this, and Hashem gives you that, it's just with simplicity. There's nothing, only when he gets older and starts thinking more, it gets more complicated. But initially it's simple. Every Yid naturally has this simple faith. Where does it come from? So this Maimon is going to explain that there are two sources for this, two ways of explaining it. And also this is something which is new, like not totally new, but it's hardly ever explained in other places. The first explanation is very common. The second explanation is something which is unique. Hardly ever do you find it explained in a Maimon. And what does it say here? Because the neshama sees godliness. The neshama shalamayla roya lakuz, the neshama lamayla sees godliness, and that Poel b'neshama, that affects the neshama in the guf to have amunah. So this is based on a story in Gemara these terms, Mazlayu Chazi, is a Hasidic terminology, but it really comes from Gemara. And the Gemara talks about the story of Daniel. There's a pasuk, you can see it here in the footnote 68. Daniel saw a vision, a prophetic vision. And the people that were near him didn't see the prophetic vision. Who were the people near him? Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And nevertheless, even though they didn't see anything, a great fear fell upon them, and they fled into hiding. So the question is, the Gemara asks, if they didn't see anything, why were they shaking with fear? Why were they so afraid? And the Gemara answers, they didn't see, but their mazel saw. What is their mazel? In fact, if you look in the Gemara, look for interpretations, there are different interpretations. The Hasidic interpretation is a mazel means that the neshama, the part of the neshama that's in Shamayim, saw, which means that Chassidus explains that the neshama, when it enters the body and gets invested in the body, not the neshama in its entirety goes into the body. Only a certain part of the neshama goes into the body. There's a part of the neshama that remains outside of the body. Where is it? It remains in Shamayim where it was initially. And of course, when you think of it, you think of it in a physical, image, as if the neshama is up there and a little part comes down, goes into the guf. But it's not a matter of space. The neshama is not stretching from heaven to earth, and it's not in one place, another place. We're talking about the level. We need time to explain it. We'll explain it tomorrow. Yeah.
So Shemayim energetically be like all around us, since it's not like that, like kind of like sky.
Exactly. Shemayim is right here. It's a deeper dimension, a deeper reality than what we see with our eyes. Okay, to be continued in your session tomorrow.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Very welcome and have a great day.
Like whatever.